Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. The Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek on Bloomberg Radio.
George Ferguson, our next guest, has definitely been my guy. I love to read his research. He is, of course, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Aerospace Defense and Airlines Analyst, and he's joining us here today just to chat about what's going on right now in the aerospace and defense industry. I mean, of course, we've really been talking about the defense budget and how all those things are really impacting U.S. defense primes here. George,
we booked him to talk about the Boeing sales.
Fair.
To IAG, but now
we're getting there.
Yeah, now we got the headlines on Newark.
No, very true. So many things going on right now. But I mean, of course, as Matt just pointed out, we have the IAG is ordering 71 large jets from Boeing and Airbus to grow its network. George, what is the initial reaction to this, and how are you all thinking about this in terms of peers and what it really just generally means for Boeing?
First, thanks for having me on. We really thought that Boeing would probably be in the middle of the Trump administration's balance of payments equalization process, let's call it, right? And I think the defense primes will be there as well. And so it wasn't surprising to us when we saw the first deal made with the UK include Boeing jets, right? And so I think they talked about $10 billion worth of Boeing jets. We saw a bunch of 787 orders today. I might quibble about whether it's really $10 billion worth. I think they're using list prices, so maybe we could have goosed that up a little bit if we used actual pay prices. But I'd expect this is going to be a trend you're going to see around the world as the Trump administration engages countries with, again, balance of payment with the U.S. that's out of whack, and they're gonna probably offer them components for aircraft from Boeing and defense products in order to balance it. So I think you could see a pretty good year for the Boeing order book. And it's been a little bit light recently because they haven't been executing. Airbus has been, and Airbus has been taking the majority of orders last couple of years. So it would be a nice tailwind for Boeing to have a good year of orders underneath them.
Well, I'm glad of that. I love the wide body planes. I hate the 737s and the A320s.
So wide body, more space?
I need more space, and I guess IAG is going to use these for BA. I use Iberia a lot, which IAG also owns. So I'm looking forward just to having more, look at me. I'm a big guy.
You're a big guy, right? Need the leg room.
But I am not going to be flying out of Newark. Typically, when I go to Berlin, I'm on a United flight straight out of Newark. But over the last 2 weeks, George, we've had 2 events where the radar screens go blank. And to me, although I heard from, I think the CEO of United said it's still safe. That does not sound safe to me. How safe is it when the radar screen turns off, George?
I think you're right. I would argue that it probably isn't that safe, but I would expect the FAA and the CEO of United to say, it is safe, because that's what they always say, but I'd find it very concerning.
So, what happens then? First of all, what happens? Does the FAA have to stop people flying out of Newark? Because if we think that all airline travel is dangerous, that is horrendous for the U.S. economy. So isn't it the right move for officials to say, no, it's just this one airport, and stop people from flying in and out of that one?
I think one, there's just no way we're going to be able to stop people coming in and out of Newark, and just to make sure we understand what the outage is. The outage is for aircraft sort of arriving into the Newark area, not so much the air traffic control going, directly landing at Newark. And so, is that a little bit better? I think it is. I think you have more time to react. Clearly, the FAA has to get better systems in place. Part of the backstory here is they moved the control of this approach and departure from Newark from a control center in New York out in Long Island to Philadelphia, because New York is pretty overworked. They've got LaGuardia, they've got Kennedy. They tried to put in systems that would essentially remote in to the New York Center to get the controllers all the information they needed. And they thought they had redundant systems in place, and clearly they didn't. So they have to redouble their efforts in making sure they've absolutely got a fail-safe line that gets them the data they need from that New York center. And then I think, part of that is that some of the employees were, very stressed out about the experience, and they've gone on leave, and that's put them at a shortage. So I think it's temporary at Newark. Newark is a challenging airport, as you know. In the summer, when we start to get thunderstorms, we can always have backups at Newark, even under normal circumstances. But if the FAA wants to push through and control this out of Philadelphia, which seems to be the right move given the amount of workload in New York, they're going to have to redouble their efforts on this backup system to make sure that there's always information, and they're going to have to get the controllers working there in Philadelphia again.
Hey, George, there was a time where people were really concerned about hopping on a Boeing plane. I would argue that people are still a little bit uncomfortable with getting on some Boeing planes. But as we've kind of navigated through earnings season, has the focus really been about tariffs and Boeing and other A&D companies' exposure to tariffs? Or are people at all still talking a little bit about the safety aspect for passengers on flights?
Here and there, I do still hear people tell me they won't fly a Boeing airplane, that they're concerned about it. I personally am not. I'd fly them anytime. So, but I do think that that the narrative is starting to turn to effective tariffs, as well as Boeing's manufacturing process. Is it stable? Is quality coming through it? Which I guess sort of bleeds into that question: Would you fly a Boeing airplane? And what we've seen in 1Q, we saw good deliveries. We saw them get rid of some of the inventory of airplanes. They've already been built. They've been sitting on tarmacs. Costs a lot of money to keep those maintained. They're getting rid of them. That'll help the cost at Boeing, and it helps them focus on the manufacturing line, which is where the cash generation is going to come from. That's going to lead the turnaround. And I would say 1Q looked pretty good. And so I think the narrative, we've got to watch tariffs closely. I don't think tariffs will hurt Boeing that much. Again, I think they'll be involved in negotiations over balance of payments. I think there's other parts of the backlog where they could deliver airplanes away from tariff issues. And so it looks to us like the setup could still be pretty good for a recovery for Boeing for a lot of deliveries this year and some good cash generation.
George, in general, I think people, though, are worried about safety, not necessarily about the 737. I know you'll still fly it. Paul Sweeney loves that plane.
He does.
But we've had more air crashes. We have these problems now at Newark. Is it just bad timing that this happens at the same time that Elon Musk is taking a chainsaw to government jobs, or is this because of that kind of cost cutting? And I also wonder, air traffic control, are they paid enough to work in the New York metro area, or do we need to pay them more?
So I think a bunch of questions in there. Maybe
two separate questions, right? Is it Doge or not? And so, should we pay these guys moving tin a little bit more?
So I think that first, it's not Doge in my view, right? So air traffic control system is something that is built over decades. And that's part of the challenge of managing it and upgrading it, is that you've got old systems working with new. The air traffic control system never seems to get enough money from Congress to make it as whiz bang as we should have here in the United States. It's important to us. It's important to our economy. We have a very disparate country, right? We've got population centers pretty far apart, no trains that link them. So to me, it's super critical to the U.S. infrastructure. It never seems to get the money it deserves. And so this is a buildup over decades of putting this together with baling wire and tape, right? So hopefully the Trump administration does come through with a nice upgrade program for the system, because I think it would also fix some of the controller issue. I think you could bring a lot better technology to the business and not have to worry about recruiting controllers. I think we're having a challenge recruiting controllers. Are they paid enough? Probably not, right? I hear ranges from $70,000 to $220,000. You probably know, even with $220,000 a year, probably a little bit hard to live on Long Island. So if you're starting out at 70, I don't know how you live in Long Island. I will tell you, some of them get, overtime and other things that bolster their pay. So maybe they don't want 100% backfill of all the employees, but probably just a bad situation for us to be in. And so we need to do better at recruiting, and we probably need to raise some pay in that area.
All right, George. Thanks very much, George Ferguson there.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Well, a lot has been going on right now, Matt. I've been watching, we're doing the news, but there's so many headlines that have been coming through. And one of the things that I've been keeping an eye on is Trump saying that he is interested, he's open to, right? He said he's okay if they do. hiking taxes on the wealthy. Those are people who are earning $2.5 million or more. And it seems as though he's cautioning the GOP on it, but he says that he's okay with it. It's a lot to uncover here. Lots of details. He has
mastered the flip-flop, the wishy-washy statement in a way that nobody else could. Because he said in a Truth Social posting that this is what cost George Bush Sr. the election, although this isn't what cost George Bush Sr. the election. He thinks Congress could do it, although he doesn't think Congress maybe should do it. He's contradicted himself in so many ways, but it's interesting nonetheless.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about it right now with Eric Wasson, congressional reporter out of Washington, D.C. for us at Bloomberg News. Eric, it seems as if President Trump wants to do this to pay for a lot of the other tax cuts that he's promised while he was on the campaign trail. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, his Truth Social post differs very much from what he's saying in private. He called up Speaker Mike Johnson on Wednesday and asked for this tax rate increase on the wealthy. He also asked in that same conversation to close what's known as the carried interest loophole, to tax carried interest as ordinary income, something that's opposed by private equity, venture capital, and the real estate industry. But and he's waffling in public. One GOP aide, high level, texted me, this guy's a force of nature. They're really trying to put together this very complicated bill, and his public statements and private interventions are making it even harder to get together on this. The big question is, how many years can they, suspend taxation on tips, overtime, and raise a standard deduction for seniors to compensate for paying tax and Social Security benefits? If they do these other pay-fors, as they're called, like raising tax on the rich, you could maybe do that for 10 years. If not, maybe it's just 2 or 3 or 4 years of that new tax benefit, and then basically they can go to the voters and say, re-elect Republicans in 2028 and we'll extend it.
Mm-hmm. Eric, of course, when we think about the idea of hiking taxes, especially on the wealthy, this could be said to be counter to what the Republican agenda is in Washington. If there is merit to these tweets and there is a push for this, what exactly does that look like in terms of the hurdles that it takes to make that happen? And does Trump actually have the jurisdiction to make that call?
Well, just to put it simply, I don't see this tax rate increase happening. It's opposed by congressional leadership in both the House and Senate. This is opposed by the core, the traditional Republicans. Now, there are these new America First populists like J.D. Vance, Orrin Cass, others who are in favor of it. And you know what? The politics, they're probably right. Democrats are going to attack this bill as a tax cut for billionaires paid for by cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. And it is a very good chance the Democrats take the House in 2026 elections running against this bill. So I think Trump's political instincts are correct, but the party really doesn't want to be the party of raising taxes. It's one thing that really unites Republicans in the past, and it's going to be almost impossible. They can only lose like 3 votes in the House, the same number in the Senate. And they're just not going to get those votes for this. So I don't think it's really going to happen. The carried interest is a different story. Maybe that gets snuck in. Certainly lobbyists are fighting tooth and nail on that issue as we speak. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, Trump has remade the party. If his Truth Social post today came out strongly in favor of this, perhaps he could move mountains. But he's so tepid in his support that I don't see him really being able to get this through.
Now, the interesting thing is that he raised taxes on so many millions of middle-class families in 2017 with the TCJA when he capped the state and local tax deduction, a deduction that had been in place for over a century that really, I think, reflects the heart of American tax policy, that you shouldn't be taxing people twice on the same income. And that cap he promised to lift when he was campaigning here in New York on Long Island before the election. Do you think we're going to see the SALT cap lifted?
It's going to be lifted, but the amount that's on the table now is a $30,000 cap instead of the $10,000 that's there now, not doubled for married couples. That was rejected immediately by a group of Republicans from high tax states like New York and California, including Elise Stefanik, who may be running for governor, who jumped into this fray kind of at the 11th hour. I think they're going to get the marriage penalty eliminated. Maybe it goes up to 40. It can't be much more. It's extremely expensive. We're talking trillions if you get higher into the size of the cap that some people are talking about, $100,000, and they just don't have the running room. In the House, the real issue is that the conservatives want spending cuts, and if you go above $4 trillion, they want more spending cuts that the moderates will not do to Medicaid. The Senate's a different story. In the end of the day, the Senate has given itself a mandate of only cutting $4 billion in spending. They're pretty much primed to put a lot of this on the nation's credit card and increase the deficit through a budget gimmick that I won't go into now, but basically it assumes that the cost of extending the existing tax cuts is zero. The Senate will probably win the end of the day, but for now, they're just trying to get this out of the House. The House has to start all tax legislation under the Constitution, and they got to satisfy the conservative fiscal hawks a little bit by not just going hog wild on things like an unlimited SALT cap.
All right. It feels like they didn't get this tax revenue before. So if you double tax people to get more tax revenue temporarily, and then all of a sudden it turns into, I guess all temporary taxes, Eric, turn into permanent taxes, don't they?
Well, it was a pay-for in 2017. I mean, it was one of the pay-fors. So they're trying to use it again to some degree. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly an argument. Interestingly, business really cares about something known as sea salt, which is the corporate salt deduction. There's been a real effort here to limit that. That's the ability of companies to deduct state income, property, and other fees from their federal taxes. And that was thought of as a pay-for this SALT cap increase. We are hearing that business is probably going to be successful in beating that back. It's a top priority of places like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to not have that in this bill. And we can get into it. There's a host of other similar tax provisions on executive compensation, stock buybacks that lobbyists are fighting over even as we speak.
It's so funny because they don't pay taxes anyway, these corporations, right? If you look at,
Fair.
Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but individual taxpayers contribute, I think, $2.2 trillion to annual revenue, and corporations contribute less than $500 billion, something like $450 billion. Is that right?
I don't have those stats right in front of me, so I can't confirm or deny them. But I will say that corporations will argue that this will impinge on economic growth and their ability to hire and grow their businesses. So there's probably some merit to that, especially if corporate taxes go much higher. The corporate SALT tax proposal is talking about that's on the table is a 1% effective corporate tax increase from the current 21 to 22%.
I mean, of course, when we think about the idea of taxing the rich, this is something that Democrats do want to hear. But I mean, when we think about the Republican Party, is there anybody that would be in support of this? Who else would be potentially on board with Trump?
Oh, well, it's very interesting. Andy Harris is the head of the House Freedom Caucus. He's very much on board. I think I first broke that story when I talked to him in the hallway. He's out on media again today saying, yes, let's do it. He would even go for millionaires, not just 2.5 millionaires, and to pay for some of these other agenda items. So it's interesting. There are interesting allies, even among the most conservative. Josh Hawley, who's a populist in the of the new style, close to J.D. Vance in the Senate, is also in favor. So there are allies, and these are part of the people who think the Republican Party needs to cement itself as a working class party. Culturally, it's very working class. It embraces very similar values, anti-woke, et cetera. These guys say it needs to be followed up with economic benefits. But on the other hand, certainly economists would say that these tariffs, some of which would go into place permanently that Trump is talking about, are a direct, basically a sales tax that really hits lower and blue collar workers.
Eric, great talking to you. I'll continue to send you the occasional email here and there whenever you're at a SALT story.
To bug him.
He's sick of me. I'm probably shooting him a Bloomberg message. By the way, where are you? It looks like you're set up in a debate hall or something.
I'm so curious.
I'm in the press conference studio of the House of Representatives, right next to the place where I work.
Oh, that makes sense.
Great backdrop.
For our congressional reporter, Eric Wasson. Definitely follow his reporting on the Bloomberg Terminal or Bloomberg.com.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 2 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Nina Trentman from the Bloomberg News side of the building. And Nina, you've brought the CFO of a construction company, which I find particularly interesting in this environment.
Yeah, it's actually a software company that sells a lot of construction companies software. So, but yeah, it's an interesting space to be.
Howard Fu joins us right now from Carpinteria, California. Did I say that right, Howard? Carpinteria. Yes?
The Procore is actually based in Carpinteria, California. I'm joining you today from Washington, D.C., actually.
Well, I'm getting all sorts of things wrong, but I'm excited about Procore. I actually think the software side is such a cool piece of this business. I have a family full of architects, so they all use this stuff. But as you may have heard in the tease, when it comes to construction, I'm wondering about not only the labor issue with mass deportations, but also the high price of lumber, the high price of steel. Like, isn't all of this converging to make it a difficult business for growth?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all for having me today. The short answer is yes, but remember, construction, we've always talked about as being a very resilient industry. And when you think about labor, when you think about costs, when you think about tariffs, when you think about all those different things, all of these challenges are not unique in terms of what the industry has faced. And the industry has always come back. And we're in an industry that is continuing to build and continuing to rebuild. And this is just another line of things that the industry has been used to dealing with. And I'm confident that the industry will come out of this.
So tell us a bit more about what your company does, specifically from the software perspective. And of course, you all work with construction industries, but what role do you really play?
Yeah, construction is one of the least digitized industries in the world. And what Procore does is to help facilitate through our customers, the industry, to help digitize what's traditionally been a very manual work process to how we build things in the world. So think about digitizing project management. Think about digitizing the financial aspects of managing a construction project. Think about digitizing how we manage the labor and the equipment and estimating and all the different parts of the ecosystem and the flow for what needs to happen and the information that needs to happen and need to be verified. That's what Procore does. And our vision and mission is to connect everyone in construction on a global platform. And our vision is to improve the lives of everyone in construction.
Howard, jumping in here, Nina, thanks for joining us. I'm just wondering, what are you hearing from clients at this point in time? We heard from Mark sort of a lot of uncertainty in the economy. We're expecting changes to the construction industry. And how far is that affecting your sales cycles? Are you already seeing some form of impact?
Yeah, in Q1, we actually had really strong results. And through April, which is the first month of our second quarter, we actually have not seen any material deviations from our pipeline in our demand or anything of that nature. Obviously, our customers are keeping a close tabs on what's going on in the broader economic environment. But you have to remember I said that the industry is really resilient, and they've been through things like this before. And when the industry and our customers make decisions, they're making decisions based on commitments that are going to have impacts over the next 2-3 years. And so the industry actually doesn't shift too quickly in terms of what the flavor of the day is in terms of the news that's going on. So what we're hearing from customers is they're keeping close tabs on things. They're making sure they have the pulse on what their subcontractors are doing, what owners are doing, making sure they have a good understanding and making sure they have a understanding of the exposure that they have across different things in their supply chains and so forth. That's actually what's going on right now. And Procore is actually seen as a partner in this because we do digitize the industry and we do help our customers digitize. We actually help them manage and get visibility into a lot of what they need to make sure that they keep a pulse on what's going on today.
So when should we then expect any changes? Of course, you said sort of your clients are not showing you any signs yet. Sort of when is a realistic point in time for us to expect changes?
I wish I had an answer to that. We're in the same boat as our customers. And again, we are actually doubling down on our partnerships to make sure that we have an open dialogue, to make sure that not only do our customers engage with us and we engage our customers, but our customers engage each other to make sure that when things do continue to evolve, that they are able to react in a timely manner. But it's very difficult to predict when things are going to happen. And so we're in the same boat with our customers.
How is this from a CFO perspective? We've seen a lot of companies this earnings cycle adjust their guidance, pulling guidance, adjusting guidance ranges. How are you thinking about guiding the street at this point, given that, of course, there is this uncertainty potentially facing your business?
Yeah, well, the first thing is we had a strong Q1. And our approach to guidance has been to take quite a conservative approach, both in terms of our full year guidance for the top line on revenue, as well as our profitability, and also definitely for Q2 as well. I think in this environment, it's prudent to take that approach. We have run multiple scenarios internally about what would need to happen in terms of bookings for us to even come close to our guidance. And our guidance allows us to actually weather scenarios where there's a significant downturn to our demand, which actually we haven't seen yet through Q1 and through April. We think it's highly conservative. We have great confidence that we're going to beat our guidance for both Q2 and for the full year. But I think it's prudent to take a conservative approach given the uncertainties that are out there right now.
Hey, I'm looking at your website. You have these giant customers: Brookfield, Balfour, Gilbane, etc. And you just mentioned your Q1 was strong, but your stock is pretty much flat over the last 5 years. It's just done nothing. Why do you think that is, and what can you do to change it?
Yeah, you have to remember, over the last 2 years, we've kind of been in this challenging demand environment. And I think that has a big influence on the sentiment of our customers and how much they're willing to commit to in terms of the construction volume that they want to run on Procore's platform. The key thing to note is customers still stay with Procore. So our gross retention rate is still in the mid 90s and customers stay with us. And so when we've been in this environment for this period of time, and then you start to layer in some of the additional aspects of what's going on in the broader economic environment, I think this is what I was speaking to earlier, where customers are staying in partnership with us to make sure that we collectively manage through this environment. But ultimately, the industry is going to be resilient, and we're going to be there along with our customers as we get through this. The other reason why customers stay with us and why we continue to get investor interest is because there is a tremendous opportunity in the industry, and we're at the forefront of that. We are at the forefront with our customers in terms of digitizing a very under-digitized industry. And we're unfortunately just in this limbo right now where there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now in the broader environment.
So we've been hearing from a lot of these major tech companies, a lot of software firms, and really the conversation has also been a focus on CapEx. As we think about AI and a lot of the transitions that are happening, of course, that requires a lot of money. How are you all thinking about spending right now? And what are you thinking in terms of AI developments at the company?
Yeah, AI, I think is exciting for the industry, for Procore, for general software. For us, we are thinking about AI and agents and large language models, both from an external works itself into our product, as well as internally in the ways that it could optimize the way we work as a company here at Procore. We continue to make investments in AI. We have made investments historically in AI with some of our prior acquisitions well before the recent push and the recent news and push on from a broader standpoint. It's something that we are continuing to work into our product with things like Copilot, our agents, and our Agent Studio. And then internally, we have been on a journey of operational excellence, of which AI is going to be a part of that as we continue to scale our business past where we are today at the $1 billion mark over next several $1 billion as we continue to grow. So critical to how we think about the way we operate internally, as well as critical to the value that we add in our product offerings to our customers.
Howard, you said earlier that your guidance is conservative going into the second quarter. I'm wondering how you're thinking about other spending, not just on AI, but also on, for example, hiring. What are your plans there, and how far will you be also cautious there?
But what we've talked about is last year and going into the first half of this year, we made a commitment to go on a number of changes in our go-to-market organization to set ourselves up for much better engagement, much more intimacy with our customers. We're basically moving to a general manager model, adding more technical resources that allows us to do that. Most of that hiring was already completed at the back part of Q4 and in Q1. The reason that's important relative to this question is essentially most of our expense structure is going to be around people, and most of our hiring incrementally has already been done. And so our expense profile is going to be very consistent throughout each quarter of this year. And as we continue to grow revenue, that scale will then flow through to our profitability profile as we work throughout each quarter of this year. In terms of the commitments, those were the major commitments that we got done in the beginning. And as I think about commitments going forward, making sure that we are very careful about making commitments that are too long-term, leave ourselves flexibility depending on what happens in the demand environment. And that's the way that I'm thinking about how to invest in the business. The other thing that we're doing is we still have $200 million left in our for a stock buyback that we will continue to look for opportunities to deploy.
Howard, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time today. Howard Fu there. He's the Chief Financial Officer over at Procore. And our thanks, of course, to Nina Trentman as well from Bloomberg News. Check out her newsletter, CFO Briefing, Bloomberg CFO Briefing.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
We want to talk a little bit about Hollywood because President Trump has promised to tax films made in foreign countries, and there's so many questions around this. How would it happen? And also, would it be helpful to Hollywood, where I think it's safe to say revenue from this business has been on the decline? Chris Palmieri joins us out of the Los Angeles Bureau, where he is Bloomberg News entertainment reporter extraordinaire, to give us his take. And Andrew Silverman is here with us in New York City at 731 Lex. He's a Bloomberg intelligence government analyst. He's a tax guy, a tax lawyer here in the studio to talk about this. Let's kick it off with you, though, Chris. And I want to ask if people in Hollywood, if people in Los Angeles, traditionally not Donald Trump's demographic or in favor probably of all of these tariffs, were like, this one is good. This one makes sense. This one helps me in my own pocketbook.
Kind of. So this all began with Trump's ambassador to Hollywood, one of them, John Voight, meeting last weekend with Trump in Mar-a-Lago. They came up with a proposal, his group, really based on tax incentives. These are the tax credits that studios get for making movies in various states and countries. And there was a small component of that was about tariffs. The president grabbed the tariff concept and then put that out on social media. I think the studios would love to see more of a tax incentive thing than a tariff related thing, because the tariff would impact their ability to still operate overseas and would cost them money.
All right, so they'd rather see, I guess, subsidies than tariffs or tax incentives, as you say. It's interesting. I don't understand really exactly how this would work. And Andrew Silverman, maybe you have given it a little bit of thought from your vantage point, because there are a lot of films that are, there's scenes done in Eastern Europe or scenes filmed in China, for example, because of what a big market it's been. And then they still make the film, edit it, color it, put it together in Hollywood. How does this work in a tariff situation?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are a lot of things that we don't know about this tariff. We don't know if it only applies to U.S. film studios making movies outside the United States. We don't know if it applies to foreign film studios making movies out of the United States. We don't know if foreign film companies coming into the U.S. making movies here would have the tariff applied to them. But the tariff is really interesting. It's actually quite like a tax. I'm a tax lawyer, so to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yeah. Exactly right. But it's a lot like either an excise tax or a border adjustment tax, right? With regard to an excise tax in this case would be sort of a sin tax, right? A tax on alcohol, a tax on cigarettes. It's a federal sales tax. So in that sense, this is quite like that. It's trying to get American studios, American film studios, and American theater goers to not see movies made outside the United States, to change their behavior. And a border adjustment tax is a tax that only applies to imports, not to exports. Same situation here, right? If you're bringing movies, presumably, if you're bringing movie making into the United States, tariff doesn't apply. If you're exporting your movie making outside the United States, tariff applies.
And it seems as though there's been some positive reception, at least from Hollywood, what I'm hearing anecdotally about this, the idea of bringing more dollars and more things being made here in the U.S. as it pertains to films. But I mean, of course, to your earlier point, Matt.
I've heard people in L.A. as well that said they're pretty happy about this.
Right. So, Chris, what are you hearing?
Well, I think you have to differentiate. There are people that want the sort of carrot portion of this whole package, the tax incentives, as opposed to the stick portion, which is getting hit with the tariff. If you maybe own studio space and are in the business of actually making movies, if you're an actor or screenwriter and you just want to see, more work brought back to the U.S., then maybe you could make an argument for this whole movement. But I wouldn't say there's a broad embrace of the idea of tariffs. In fact, a couple of days after this first came out, you saw California Governor Gavin Newsom suggest sort of his own plan, which was $7.5 billion of federal tax credits, which was actually more in line with what the John Voight Group was proposing. Tax incentives, federal tax credits to make movies in the U.S.
Well, I mean, Chris, as a follow-up to that, so I cover real estate stocks, and one of the stocks that I cover is Hudson Pacific Properties, and they are actually an owner of a lot of these Hollywood studios. And Wedbush analysts are actually saying that tariffs, this whole situation, could potentially be a possible positive for the company. When we think about these Hollywood studios, can it be a perk at all for them in terms of bringing in more dollars to them specifically at all?
The tariff portion, it's a little tricky for the studios. They're going overseas because it's cheaper for them to do so. Okay, so if they're forced by tariffs to come back here, it's not necessarily a win for them. It's a win for U.S. jobs, which is definitely something President Trump wants to do, and so you could see why some workers would be happy about that. Calculating a tariff on a foreign film, I mean, depends on how you define it. I mean, basically, all the Star Wars films were shot in the UK or Tunisia. They were all foreign films. It's a very complicated process. The Voight Group did suggest some way of doing so, only putting a tariff on the parts that are shot overseas, and then really only slapping the tariff on in the case of what they called a bad actor who could have made the movie domestically but deliberately went overseas. It's a complicated thing.
I mean, I know people in LA as well who have space that studios rent, who have warehouses, and they have made for years revenue on companies shooting movies in their places, and they have less revenue now because studios are going overseas more. Also, I will note Australia's U.S. envoy said this is a tax on Bluey, which is a fantastic product, completely filmed overseas or colored overseas. And Andrew, I wonder about the legality of all of these taxes, and I guess it's a much bigger question, right? IEEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, has been challenged in the past. President Trump tried to use it to expel TikTok in his first term, and then a couple of courts told him no can do. Now he's a huge fan of TikTok, of course, that Chinese social media site used to spy on us. What do you think about challenges to his tariff powers? Will they be successful in the courts, any of them? Is Congress ever going to take this power back from the executive?
So let me just start out by saying I'm also a huge fan of Bluey.
Yeah, it's great.
I have to see this.
It's a great product. Absolutely love it.
I must be late.
So the reason that President Trump referenced national security when he was talking about this tariff on foreign-produced films was because that's a key aspect of IEEPA, right? If it's related to national security, then the president can do it. And Congress has given that power away, even though it's in the Constitution. Congress said, look, if it's national security, it's the president's business to do what he wants to do. And it has been challenged in the past. But normally the president wins those lawsuits because courts don't question national security.
And Hollywood films are a matter of national security, right? Isn't that what we all think? Isn't
Obviously.
that the case?
Of course.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, the president has said that. Chris, I just want to ask for a second because I can't let any mention of John Voight go without bringing up his Chrysler LeBaron that George Costanza bought. Does everyone know the reference that I'm making, or does nobody watch Seinfeld?
I think you're alone, unfortunately.
Am I alone there? Chris Palmieri, did you not see that episode?
There's so many great John Voight moments. I don't know where to start. But, look, President Trump appointed him, Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone as his ambassadors. I got to give Voight credit. He's the only guy who actually came up with some plan. And he's getting everybody talking about it in Hollywood, and maybe even we'll get something accomplished. So
it's a great episode.
For the Midnight Cowboy.
He leaves his pencil in the glove box, and then George has John Voight's pencil. And anyway, I wonder if you think he also screened Alcatraz with the president while he was at Mar-a-Lago, because together with the film tariffs came the idea to reopen that prison off the coast of San Francisco. And what's the reaction been like on the West Coast to that little piece of information?
Similarly, shock and awe. You may have seen the reports that that was closed 50 years ago because it cost 3 times more than any other federal prison to operate. So I can't tell you if they screened it. I know they all watched the Kentucky Derby together, and I'm almost positive that Trump did not bet on journalism. But
and Chris, I know Hollywood has really been through a lot, especially as we reflect on the fires. What's it like? I mean, of course, you live there personally. What's it like, and what's the recovery been like for the industry more broadly?
Well, to understand what's going on here, you have to step back a few years. We had this era where people were calling peak TV, and there were 600 scripted TV programs were being made because everybody wanted to create the next Netflix. And it didn't matter how much you were spending, you were trying to get as many subscribers. That started to change around 2022. The strikes happened, and then the studios said they were already cutting back, and then they said we can get by with a lot less. And at the same time, streamers were trying to reach a global audience. So we're now watching TV shows that were made in South Korea or France or Israel. And so this is what happened. We reported last year production in the U.S. between 2021 and 2024 declined about 29%. So there's a number of factors: the cost cutting, the globalization of the entertainment industry, and the tax credits that you can get by making a film in the UK or Australia or whatever. A lot of things converging.
All right, Chris, great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us. Chris Palmieri, there out of our Los Angeles bureau. He covers Hollywood for us and entertainment. Andrew Silverman here from Bloomberg Intelligence, our resident tax lawyer.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.